Hey, I'm Ashtyn.
I'm Wayne, and on today's episode of Gamer Gab, we're going to go through our gaming pet peeves.
Followed by a couple games that we've been playing.
And if we get around to it, we'll get to some game news.
So let's get started.
Gamer Gab.
Go.
Okay, so we all have things that bother us in gaming. You're like, why? It doesn't make sense, but why? Good game, but why? So let's go over a few of the things that really bother you.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So what do you have first?
All right. One of the main things that bothers me is not being able to jump. I mean, you play first or third person shooters or adventure games, and you can't jump. There's nothing more irritating than being attacked by an enemy and getting stuck like behind a knee-high box. Yeah, or a rock or something, and just being trapped there getting wailed on.
Yes, I want to build on that because I've noticed, gaming mechanics, it'll be advertised, oh, this character can climb and, jump and whatever.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, they can't.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be able to grab onto a ledge or whatever it may be, and it just doesn't function right.
Yeah, or like you can only grab onto ledges that are painted blue.
Yes.
There will be like a color that the game picks. Like the game I'm playing right now, it's yellow, and like you can only grab onto ledges that are painted yellow.
That's a common one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a game that requires like hand-to-hand combat, right? Close quarters combat is not having a dodge option. Or a roll. I mean, I know that like if you're playing Dark Souls or something like that, then it like you do nothing but roll.
Yes.
Like you see those clips of people just rolling around.
A popular game that has very limited controls when it comes to that.
What?
Resident Evil.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
That's another one for
Which
sure.
I've heard that they're actually incorporating that in the new one that's about to be released.
Yeah.
So everyone's excited for that.
I've heard on the Resident Evil 4 remake that one of the things that they're changing is try to update the controls a little bit.
Yeah, love to see that.
What's your next pet peeve?
All right, I have my next pet peeve down is empty choices. So basically, it's advertised as a game that it's like all these different choices and you affect the world around you, and it's shallow. I can see through it. It all funnels into the same narrative.
Yeah.
Remember when we both played Outer Worlds? Does everyone remember that game? Fallout failed, and so everyone's sights got set on Outer Worlds.
Yeah.
And high expectations, which it was a good game. It was just really shallow. I hope to see in the future with the sequel that it'll have some more depth to it. But all that to say, I went back and started playing it again to see, and I also watched a ton of YouTube videos on it, and you come to find out a lot of the stuff doesn't change the story so much. Yeah,
it's a cheap way for the developers to make you feel invested in your choices, because unless you play it more than once, you don't know that that choice that you just agonized over would have ended up the same way no matter what you pick.
And there are several games that unfortunately do that. They like to give you a facade, but it's so easy to see through it because of their reaction. Like you just took out their entire family and they're just hey.
Yeah. Okay, so my next one, and again, this is something that I encountered in Dead Space that just seemed to I noticed it more in this game, I think, really sort of taking me out of the action, is specific save points. I think, man, in today's next-gen consoles and the abilities that we have to streamline the way games are played, I don't see why it's necessary. Again, you're wandering down these dark hallways, you're, fighting off monsters and jump scares, and then, you walk down this one corridor and like, oh, there's the computer on the wall, better go save my game.
There's a typewriter.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold that thought.
Yeah, and so just give me a save option in the pause menu. I mean, everybody's so busy today. It's not often that I'm sitting down and playing a game for like 2 hours straight.
There was a game that I played that was hyper realistic, Kingdom Come Deliverance. Yes, and you had to have some sort of vegetable or something.
Have a savior schnapps in your inventory
And
to
that
be
was
able to
for the
save your
random.
game.
That was for the random saves.
Yeah.
But you could actually go back and sleep somewhere, I think.
Yeah, you could sleep and then you could choose save and quit. And so I even did that a couple of times where like, so if you wanted to quit at a random time, you could choose save quit, but it would back you all the way out to the start menu and then you just have to load your game back in.
I don't know that I even did that.
Yeah.
So, wow. Next, I have overly complicated controls.
Yes.
I've experienced it, and it makes it almost like a job, you know? I mean, you get in a routine, muscle memory and stuff after you play for a little bit, but sometimes it don't be like that.
Yeah, well, combat is, such a big part of games, and for games to like expect you like you're standing in front of a Street Fighter arcade game or something to where you're supposed to hit all these crazy button combos that are like 7 or 8 buttons deep. Who has time to remember all that?
Horizon Forbidden West, which, did I say that right?
You did.
I always get that name wrong. That game, specifically the new one, I don't remember. I haven't played the first one in forever, but the new one, I don't typically struggle with controls that often. And on that one, I was having to look up repeatedly how to do different things because you have so many different tools and how to use them. It's just different. It doesn't follow a normal scheme either, which can we tack that on whenever it's like L1 to run? Hitman's awesome, but Hitman has that like weird controls that aren't from this generation.
Yeah, I always hated I love the Elder Scrolls games, and Fallout too, but the jump button is Y on the Xbox. It's the top button. Is that triangle on PlayStation?
It's triangle.
That gets on my nerves too. Like I just want, why can't A be jump or X, on the PlayStation?
Yeah. What do you have next before I even go on?
Useless customization options. So
Cyberpunk.
Yeah, don't give me the option to spend all this time on how my character looks if I don't ever get to see my character. If it's a third person game, then at least you can see what you look like from the back,
Yeah.
In Fallout, you have the option to switch to third person to see what your character looks like. I could never play those games in third person because the jump mechanic was so awkward. Like the way your character looks when they jump.
Yeah.
It more like they just got launched into the air briefly, instead of like an actual what any normal person looks like jumping. So I could never play in third person. But like Cyberpunk, for instance, there were all these gazillion different outfits and stuff, and even tattoos and hairstyles and everything that you could use, and it seemed so cool.
Well, they marketed it all about that,
Yeah.
but then come to find out, well, you couldn't see him maybe in the mirror for 2 seconds or on your pause menu.
Yeah,
But that was it.
I talked about this in the last episode for High on Life, that they let you pick what your character looks like at the beginning. And you didn't spend a lot of time on it. It was a brief thing because you only had like 6 different options.
Yeah.
But still, it's a waste of time, you know? And I don't know if they think that it makes you feel more connected to your character if you know what they look like. But if you never see them again, it doesn't take long to forget.
Yeah. My next pet peeve would have to be, an open world RPG that is just empty. It's just bland and basic, no depth to it.
We need to have a Cyberpunk graphic that just pops up on the screen, just like any time that so we can just go.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, one that comes to mind, once again, we've already mentioned on here, is Outer Worlds, But then you've got on the flip side, No Man's Sky, where there's planets everywhere, but I don't understand what they don't understand. Just because you have open space, it's not fulfilling.
Yeah. If it's not filled with anything, if it's just barren, then it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel real.
And then you've got Outer Worlds, which is small, but it's supposed to be a planet. And then there's nothing really to explore. There's some land and a few creatures, but.
Well, in Fallout 76, which is another one that has a laundry list of issues, when it launched, it was the same way. You other than the handful of other players in real life that were wandering around your world doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
It was just robots.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bethesda, over encumbered. I hate to see that on the screen. You are over encumbered and cannot run. Well, you can't run. You can't fast travel. Like, I much prefer games that just won't let you pick stuff up. Like, hey, your inventory's full. Sorry, you're going to have to throw something out if you want to pick this up.
Yeah.
Because given the chance to over encumber myself, I'm going to carry everything. And I'm going to move like a turtle.
Yes.
And get killed by everything around because I refuse to drop anything if you let me pick it up. So
you've got 30 minutes to play a game and you're inching across the entire world because it won't allow you to just just let me, if you're gonna allow me to be over encumbered, just let me fast travel and go put it in my chest.
Like, let you set a home point if it's an inn somewhere in a little town, let you set a home point and make it where if you're over encumbered, you can only fast travel to whatever point you set as your home.
Yeah. Not the time to be realistic.
Yeah.
Let's get home and unload all of the loot that we were encouraged to grab.
Yeah.
For my final pet peeve, I have story progression that's done through emails and, voice memos, which are a little more acceptable than the emails. However, that's not hitting for me. And you can also miss them. And then people just typically, I don't know about y'all, but we may have a limited time to play and I'm trying to get to the action or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's a cheap way to get your story across, which Fallout, and then there is some of it in Resident Evil that you can miss. There's several games that do it, but key points that you can miss or look over easily that are game changers to the story, I don't think that that's the best way to go about it, and it's not the most intriguing way.
No, if you're gonna have information that can be read in text, it needs to have some sort of marker on it where when you read it, it opens up other dialogue options with other people, like whether, even if it's not dialogue that you choose, if it's just an NPC that's going to say part of a cutscene or whatever, and they're going to say what they're going to say, that should change if I've read information that changes the plot or changes my character's understanding. They need to say something different, because if they don't and they are acting like they don't know something that I've already read a piece of paper that says they know, that's
kind of a plot hole.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so for my last one, the mute protagonist. I mean, I do not like a hero that doesn't have a voice. I mean, think about all the iconic hero, like, video game character voices. I mean, like, when I think of the Master Chief, of course, that voice, even though you don't see his face, just that voice. I mean, Steve Downes is the guy that did the voice for Master Chief, and he's been doing it since the beginning. So like 20 years now he's been playing Master Chief.
Wow.
And he's actually a radio DJ like in New England somewhere, and like that's his daytime gig, and he just happens to be the voice of one of the biggest video game characters in the world.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I just don't understand, like High on Life did this, and I talked about High on Life in the last episode, but the way they got around it was that all your weapons had voices, and so they talked for you. They would talk to you, but then they would, if you were talking with an NPC, they would talk on your behalf. And so even though I thought it was a little bit weird, because literally everyone in the game spoke besides your character, I think a lot of developers maybe don't do that if there's any character customization at all.
If you make a good game like Skyrim, I'll take the silence. I mean, could it have been better if you had a voice? Absolutely, but I'll take it.
I mean, technically, Skyrim's hero did speak. Or she shouted.
Shouted. I was like...
So you only get to hear like one or two words at a time, but it's definitely there.
Technically, it's there.
Before we get into what we're playing right now, Gamer Gab is a production of Conway Corp. We are consistently voted Conway's best internet service, offering speeds of up to 2 gigs. Plus, we're located right here in Conway, so when you need help, you'll find it locally. Customer service is available when you need them on the weekend or after hours. Call us at 450-6000 or online at conwaycorp.com. Just click the data icon to learn more. Okay, so last episode you talked about Hogwarts Legacy and how you had just gotten into it a little bit. So you're back with a full review for us.
I am back with a full review. I briefly discussed some of the stuff that looked really good, some stuff that I thought that they could have worked on or done better, and I think I've got a good grasp on the game overall now. I've spent a lot of time traveling around, exploring, not progressing the story fully. I'm well through it, but there's so many side quests. I've been doing that because I don't want to get through the game too quick.
Sure.
Especially I paid $80 for it. So
you gotta get your money's worth.
I gotta get my money's worth.
Yeah.
Okay. Before I had discussed the customization, the character customization, that was a little, could use some work, some polishing. It wasn't as awesome as I had hoped for. It gets the job done. And then the story had just started. I didn't really know what was going on. Now I've got more of an understanding. You're a 5th year student at Hogwarts and you have special powers, ancient magic. And there's something going on with, I believe they're called goblins, the big nose little guys. So you're trying to uncover what they're up to. Story is interesting. The game is good. There are a couple of things that they definitely could work on that, I talked about combat and I was like, it feels really good.
Yeah.
The combat does feel really good, but it does get a bit overwhelming. You need more hotkeys. You learn, I think, around 16 spells total, and you're using some consistently, like Revelio. Thank you for that. Revelio. You're spamming Revelio.
Oh, okay.
Okay. There's a few that you do span around the castle, and you need throughout the map to see your treasure, to see anything that you can use magic on too. Well, that's great. I need that. You also need Loomis. You also need a few spells to gather pages out of your handbook and whatnot, just around the castle. You need a few of those. Well, then you need your combat spells too, which are completely different, like utility versus combat. Okay, well, some of the wizards, the bad wizards that you fight, they'll throw up a shield. The only way to break the shield is if you're using a certain spell that's of a certain color. And, my favorite ones that are the most powerful tend to be red. Okay, well, if it's a yellow shield, I can't break that with red. And yes, you can hold one button and then hit another to swap over to another weapon wheel for your magic. But it becomes pretty tedious because you're constantly having to rebuild them. At least I am. It is a little bit of a nuisance to have to constantly switch them around depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
I wish that they would just have more hotkeys or hit X button.
It almost sounds like they developed the combat around like PC gaming.
Maybe so. Yeah, because there's more buttons available. Funny enough, I heard that it's running the worst.
Really?
On PC. Yeah, but I don't know. That's something that got increasingly more difficult with the more things that you unlocked, and you typically are going to find the spells that you like to use and use those the most. But for puzzles in the game, you're going to need other ones. I mean, if you're not in a combat situation, then it's fine not being able to get to stuff quickly. However, I still find myself a bit annoyed by it. Not to mention you can capture beasts and stuff, and they put that on the weapon wheel too. So that was one thing that got me, along with, we talked about mobility. And the mobility, in the very beginning, they do give you like a little bit of a
tutorial.
A tutorial, yes. And it shows that you can climb up like cliffs and, you've got more mobility than what I would have thought. Well, I can't really rely on it. And he doesn't latch on to edges. It's kind of, I don't even know if I'd say 50-50, maybe 50-50. Something else that kind of shocked me with the game was get to those Merlin trials. You have to do 1 billion of them to get your inventory up, but it's definitely worth it. You've got to go and sell, or you're going to have to go and delete. I didn't know this until about halfway through the game, but really the clothes that you pick up, you can keep the way that they look and tack on the stats. So really you just need your highest level stats of clothes, delete or sell the rest of your clothes.
Yeah.
Did not know that. But you can't sell anything else but clothes. So you pick up all sorts of stuff, but you can't sell it.
Okay. So give me a few pros for this game just to sum it up.
Beautiful game. Anywhere that you see in this game, you can go. And talk about a job to pull off.
Yeah.
I mean, that castle is so intricate. They have pulled it off. I mean, it is incredible.
Nice.
Really. The feel of the game, everything that they have that's going on, the beasts that they incorporated. Anyone who is a Potter fan is, I mean, probably just absolutely crazy over this game because it really does bring you in.
Yeah.
And I don't know everything, obviously, about Harry Potter or any of that world. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I'm able to appreciate all the work that obviously went into it. Are there some shortcomings? Sure. What it does right, it does really, really right.
Okay, so what are your cons then?
Cons are, we've talked about Quidditch. It's weird because in the game it's addressed that there was an accident, and so they have canceled the season.
Well, that's cool though that they did at least acknowledge the absence of such a big part of the wizarding world.
Yeah, I mean, I liked that they mentioned it because it wouldn't have made any sense. But I guess I hoped to see it in DLC, but then they quickly came out and said there was no DLC, and then recently we've seen that they haven't said anything. I'm confused on that.
Since at the time that we're recording this, the game hasn't actually released on all consoles yet, that they may be waiting until it's been out everywhere for any sort of announcement like that.
Yeah, which would make sense. I would love to see some DLC for it. Very good game for that, to flesh it out more. But yeah, pros, it's a beautiful game. It does well what it does. The shortcomings, I mean, the story is good. I did find it odd after I saw someone pointed out there's a specific storyline side quest, and it near rivals the main story, but it's the only one that does that. Like The Witcher had. Queen. I mean, the side quests were awesome.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like there was just one side quest. It was like that one competes with the main story.
Yeah.
This one's kind of like, that one stands out, and if you've played it, you probably know exactly what I'm referring to, the Sebastian's quest line. And I think a lot of people were also expecting more classwork, like classroom time, maybe interactive, and they'll do like
nerds.
I know, right? They'll do little short scenes with it, and then you just kind of pick up your assignment. So it's not as much there, and that's just going to depend, I think, on what you were expecting or wanting out of it. People were referring to Bully, if you remember the game Bully.
Absolutely, Bully was a great game.
It's been years.
Yeah.
Years and years and years.
It's like Rockstar classic right there.
Yes. They pulled a couple things, one thing that I think that actually would have made it maybe more interesting or dynamic was they had a curfew originally.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned in one of the missions and never brought up again. There are professors and students out in the hall that are kind of keeping watch. It's never mentioned again. So it would have made the day and night cycle a little bit different.
Sure.
I don't know. I think it may have made it a little bit more dynamic, something more to it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because it doesn't make any difference. And then if you're going to talk about a curfew, and on the movies, they had a curfew.
Right.
And so that was taken away, and it makes it easier, but easier isn't always better.
Out of 10, what do you give Hogwarts?
I would give it probably an 8, and that could probably go up if they add that DLC and flesh things out a bit more. If they fix some of the glitches that they have.
Sure.
And I mean, there's already been mention of sequel, a sequel out, and I bet that they would knock it out of the park. If they take any kind of notes on anything, because there weren't there weren't that many big shortcomings. There were shortcomings, but they weren't a game breaker.
Yeah.
Still enjoyed it thoroughly, and I know a lot of people out there are.
Yeah. Before I get into what I'm playing right now, Gamer Gab is a production of Conway Corp. We're consistently voted Conway's best internet service, offering speeds of up to 2 gig. Plus, we're located right here in Conway, so when you need help, you'll find it locally. Customer service is available when you need them with weekend and after-hour support. Call us at 450-6000 or online at conwaycorp.com. Just click on the data icon to learn more.
All right, so tell us about what you're playing.
So I recently just finished up the Dead Space remake. The original came out in 2008. You said you haven't played Dead Space.
I surprisingly have not. I know that it's one that's got a lot of fans out there.
Yeah, it's sort of a survival horror classic in the sci-fi genre. I mean,
I was in middle school when it came out.
So here's Deep Space. A massive deep space mining ship goes dark after unearthing a strange artifact on a distant planet. Engineer Isaac Clarke embarks on a repair mission only to uncover a nightmarish bloodbath. The ship's crew horribly slaughtered and infected by alien scourge.
Okay, so this is rated M.
Absolutely, yes, it is rated M. Anytime you can say dismemberment plays a vital role in combat, I think you're probably looking at an M rating. So yeah, it's definitely rated M, so not recommended for kids.
Okay.
I played the original in 2008 when it came out, and honestly, I think the fact that I haven't played it since then was one of the best things for me regarding this, because I had fond memories of it.
Yeah.
But those memories weren't fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there are a ton of videos out there on YouTube of people comparing the two, side-by-side comparisons and stuff. And because it is so well-loved, that can be a double-edged sword. You
know what else that this game has been getting compared to recently?
What?
Cholesterol Protocol.
Yeah, I've heard Callisto Protocol. Yeah. Earlier I called it Callista Protocol before when we were talking about this. But so it turns out that Callista Protocol, I did it again.
It's hard to say.
Callisto Protocol is directed by Dead Space series co-creator Glenn Schofield and is considered to be a spiritual successor to the Dead Space series. Now, that's according to Wikipedia. I would say it was definitely directed by Dead Space co-creator. Don't know so much about the spiritual successor part, since I've read that they are not related in any way. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a comparison to draw. I mean, they do have a lot of similarities.
Definitely not a very good representation of Dead Space.
For sure.
I had missed out on Dead Space, but played this with a friend, and he rage quit that. I mean, pretty quick, and it wasn't challenging. It was immediately repetitive, and the controls were wonky. Hopefully you're not going to tell me that with Dead Space.
No, definitely not. Like I said before, I like, and I think it served the remake well if you haven't played the original recently, because I wasn't comparing them side by side. Now, having said that, there were places in the remake where I recognized things, which I thought was good. I mean, that lets you know that it's a faithful recreation. I recognized, some of the scenes were even shot for shot were exactly like the original, but then they did change up some things, some pacing in certain areas and stuff like that.
Welcome, Isaac Clarke, to the USG Ishimura.
Going back to the Ishimura, the ship where the game takes place after all this time, was really cool, and the graphics have been completely updated, of course. I mean, it's a very dark game, but I mean, that's down to the vibe that they're trying to set, not so much.
Is it problematically dark?
It's not during the game. Now, when I was watching back some of the clips that I'd captured, I was like, wow, this looks really dark. But in the game where you're, using the flashlight on your gun to see around dark corners and stuff like that, it's not really an issue. I mean, it just adds sort of to the feel of the game.
What does this game do right, would you say? Like, what are the pros with it?
The combat in the original was fun, and they kept everything where it needed to be. I mean, the dismembering the necromorphs, as they're called, is really satisfying, but it's a necessary part of combat. I mean, if you're just aiming, like in a typical shooter, you just aim center mass or headshots,
Yeah.
and that's how you take your enemies down quicker. That is not the way it works in Dead Space. You've got to use your weapons to dismember it, to cut off their arms and legs first, because if you just shoot center mass, you can even take their head clean off and they'll still keep coming. So if you're playing it like you play a typical shooter, you're just going to be burning through ammo like crazy, which it gets and that's not to say that you're not going to do that some, because if they're across the room from you, you've got a few seconds to pick off some arms and legs,
I would panic shoot.
But when they get up in your face, because like I talked about before, there's no dodge option, there's no roll option, so your only choice is just to spray and pray, when they're up in your face like that. And so it does get frantic pretty quickly, but it's still fun,
Yeah.
So the combat and the graphics and the setting definitely are pros for this game, for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything that I guess they didn't pull off so well? There's a lot of text, like data pads that have like emails and stuff, correspondence between people that you have the option to read. Now, I mean, you don't have to, having something like that in a game like this, where you could get your face torn off at any given moment, it kills the pacing in a way, because I can just picture me being Isaac Clarke in real life and huddled in the corner of a room with my data pad, like trying to read this email real quick so that I can put it down and get back out to killing monsters. So that sort of was a little bit of a pacing issue if you do decide to read them. But I didn't read everything, admittedly. I mean, but I didn't miss out on any of the story. I mean, there's some, obscure backstory that I'm sure you get from that stuff, but it wasn't required. Would you know if you missed some of the story that you did not read?
I felt like by the end of it, I had a good grasp on what was going on.
A good understanding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something else that they did also have a lot of audio clips that you could pick up and listen to, and you could listen to them like while you're moving around. You don't have to just stand still.
Okay, so like Fallout, like the holotapes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you can play your holotapes and then
bit better.
Just go on about your business while you're listening to that stuff. So those worked really well, and they didn't take you out of the combat or anything, although it is kind of hard to listen to to an audio track like that while you're fighting for your life. But something else that I didn't necessarily like, and I think I also talked about this earlier too, was I felt like the designated save points kind of killed the immersion a little bit for me,
Yeah.
But that's kind of a small gripe in a game like this.
Especially it's old school in a way, and that was how they did it.
For sure. At the end, or nearing the end of the campaign, there's a portion, and I remember this from the original game too, where it's just kind of a slog. Like, you leave the ship and go down to the planet's surface, and you have to escort the artifact that they found down on the planet's surface. You have to take it back to try and like stop whatever's going on. So you take the artifact that they brought up to the ship, and that's what caused all the mayhem going on up there. You have to take it
Perfect.
back to the planet's surface and basically put it back where you found it, right? And so there's a portion at the end of the game where it's kind of hard to describe, but you're basically this thing is on a big conveyor belt, and there are like, seems like a dozen doors that you have to, like, big garage type doors that as conveyor belt with the artifact pulls up, you have to raise the door and then go through the door while the conveyor belt moves it up to the next door. And every time it stops at a door, you get attacked by a couple waves of enemies.
Because
right?
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and so then you have to kill all these enemies, and so it doesn't move the story along. It's just it felt like they were just trying to stretch that portion out, and I think that the story would have been better served by maybe only 2 doors, you know?
Yeah. I can get that.
But honestly, like I said, those are small gripes. I mean, there was one other thing that kind of got on my nerves was you can upgrade your suit. You can get different levels, like, of your engineer suit, right? And if you find the upgrade just in the world, like when you're looting, you know, little boxes or lockers or whatever, it goes to your upgrade station. The upgrade goes to your upgrade station, but then you have to buy it. Like, it's already in your upgrade station. You found it, but then you have to buy it before you can equip it.
I don't like
and that got on my
that.
nerves because it's like thousands and thousands of credits, you know, to get these new suits. And I'm like, I already found it. Like, just give me the new suit, man. Like, I just want my suit.
Yeah, you just want
Trying
your
to get my
suit.
new suit.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit irritating, but small stuff. I mean, overall, it was a great game. They kept what they needed to keep, and they changed what they needed to change to, you know, make it more relevant for a new audience.
now.
And it was killer.
And that's what you need to do to make a successful remake,
Absolutely.
you know? So
Yeah.
so what would you rate it overall?
Man, you know, given the nostalgia that I had, you know, going into this game, I think I would give it a 9.
Wow.
Honestly, yeah. Like, I mean, it was really good. The story was good. The visuals were good. The combat was good. There were only a couple of parts where it felt like it dragged a little bit, you know? I think I don't know if that would change, if it would be less or more if I hadn't known what I was getting going in, you know?
Yeah.
But I do think that if you're a fan of the original, I think you're going to be pleased by this one.
That's kind of like mine. You know, I gave Hogwarts Legacy an 8. I know that a lot of people are giving it 10s and 9s, and it just depends on your background and what you expected.
For sure.
And then nostalgia.
Yeah.
You know, so it just depends, but sounds like we both got a couple of really good games.
Yeah, definitely.
Before we get into game news, Gamer Gab is a production of Conway Corp. We're consistently voted Conway's best internet service, offering speeds up to 2 gigs. Plus, we are located right here in Conway. So when you need help, you'll find it locally. Customer service is available when you need them with weekend and after-hours support. Call us at 501-450-6000 or online at conwaycorp.com. Just click on the data icon to learn more.
Okay, guys, so before we wrap up this episode, Ashtyn, in the last episode, you reviewed a Switch game, and I know that you're a fan.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rumors swirling around out there right now about the successor to the Switch. Let's talk about that. Let's get into it. What would you like to see in the new Switch?
This is such an interesting debate because there's 2 different ways they can go. I mean, they just released OLED, I believe is what it's called, you know? And, you know, the hardware is a bit beefier. Probably what, you know, is going to run. Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out. It's actually called Tears of the Kingdom. That's what it's called, Tears of the Kingdom. And it'll probably run better on the OLED, but I'm a little bit already kind of like, what's so much beefier? But I'm interested to see, after the Switch has gotten so much hype, it's a successful console. Surprisingly, a lot of people were surprised by that, including me, because the Wii and, you know, other
Right.
ancestors of the Nintendo Switch.
Well, in the new partnership with Microsoft
yeah,
and Activision,
suspicious.
Yeah.
It started off as something small. It's like Call of Duty. That's just a doorway right there, and there's already talk. So it's interesting because I'm like, which route are they going to go?
Right.
I mean,
are they going to try to stay portable, or are they going to try to compete with the big boys?
Are they going to do what a lot of things are doing, where it's like pro, and then maybe a smaller, less powerful, more portable version? I mean, I think that'd be interesting. However, will it be able to run the new games?
Yeah. So in order to maintain any sort of portability, you've got to think that they've still got to be looking small.
Exactly. I think that they're so successful because it is portable. What do you guys think?
Yeah, let us know in the comments down below, and let us know what you guys are playing right now. If you've got an idea for a game that you'd like to watch us talk about, then also drop that in the comments below. That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time on Gamer Gab.
Gamer Gab.
Go.